All right. Maybe we could shut that door. Thanks. All right. My name is William Charles Spanier III, also known as Billy, Bill, Will, but never Willie. And I have my website's energywork.com as well as chakrafriends.com. Does anybody know who Robert Bruce is or was? He was not the philosopher.
Oh, okay.
Robert Bruce out of Perth, Australia, was a very gifted astral projection doer and teacher. And I came up reading his stuff and because I was looking for explanations. Anyway, he wrote a book called Energy Work and also Astral Dynamics. But when I got the .com Energy Work, but when I met him, I told him that I had it, and you could see he was like angry. He's like, how didn't I get that? And then I ended up hanging out with him for like a week, and we talked about so much metaphysical and astral projection stuff. Point is, you should look into his books. He passed away like a year and a half ago. And I haven't seen him out. So astral projection is a particular state of being. Astral is a place. That's why all astral projections are out-of-body experiences, but not all out-of-body experiences are astral projections. There are many different locations you could exist in while you're non-physical. And I've been having these on purpose for about 20 years now, maybe 19. And I used to do it almost every day. And then over some years passed, and I kind of settled down and did more things here, so I wouldn't like lose my mind and become homeless or something. But I still do it. I get back into it, but I'm a lot more mature about it. Like before, when you would exit, when I would exit, I would just wonder like, where do I go? How long am I going to be out? Like, go out the door as fast as you can, go fly, whatever. Try to visit someone, stuff like that. But I have come to find that when you're in energetic form, the best thing that you can do to further your own evolution, if that's not enough for you, is you practice what you would practice in physical form, which could be mantras, but you do it in energetic form. So are you actually saying anything? Well, yeah, you're creating a reverberation in energetic form. And that's kind of what a lot of the mantras that have been taught from like Hindu or Vedic, whatever, a lot of it is meant to be done in energetic form because things happen a lot quicker. And if anybody's familiar with the Upanishads, they say point blank in the books that to excel your evolution faster, do the Om, like while heart centered, right? And you want to reverberate it. And I've done that before. And I did it just through my own experimentation. So I eventually got to the point where I would exit my body and then I would sit and I would practice stuff. And sometimes you're taught by somebody like a guide or something, like different complex things. But when I was out of body, I was in Cuba, and when I exited my body there and I practiced the Om while in energetic form, it did start to reverberate. And like I stopped doing it myself and it just kept going. And after that, I saw like the future for probably 3 or 4 weeks into the future, in which it becomes a memory. But that happened by reverberating Om while in energetic form. But the thing is how to get there, how to have an out-of-body experience. But I'm sure if you haven't, or even if you have, but when you do, you're gonna wanna just go out and meet things and like fly out the door. But eventually, if you keep practicing, I hope you get to the point where you are a little bit more mature about it. So Qigong, which I had a teacher named Master Zhou, who also died recently, is a way of moving energy in the body and storing it. And then most people know what the dantian is. It's an energy storage house, like a little bit below your belly button and inside. These are things that you want to fill up in order to have the best chance of having out-of-body experience. It's raising energy, storing it, and then technique. A lot of people don't want to do that. This is why a lot of people will never have one, and they'll go to things like DMT or ayahuasca, which I've tried ayahuasca before once, and it was in Peru, not this Peru, and I thought it was okay. But like the point of all this is being able to do things on demand. That's what we're trying to get to. So to raise energy, you could go the direction of Qigong and that would be enough. Or you could start to learn how to move. It has a lot of names. Like the most recent term for this was tactile imaging, but this stuff goes back thousands of years. You want to be able to move energy within your hands and your feet and up your arms, up your legs manually. There are ways of triggering this and then putting it into places. And then once you get good at it, you do complicated maneuvers with it, and this is how you open up different senses. So I don't know if we should get on this right now. But again, astral is a place, and out-of-body experience is a completely different thing. I've left my body and like tried to fly to the moon and stuff like that. I can be very, very close to here. But also in like more of an astral place, like in the movie Inception, if anybody's seen that, you can build areas and like there are fixed places that exist energetically that are just your spots. And when I went to the Monroe Institute, if anybody knows what that is, no. In Virginia, this guy named Robert Monroe found a way to use technology in order to induce out-of-body experiences. He was the first guy to do it. He's been dead for a long time. But yeah, when I was there, I had some experiences and I found out like several different astral places that I've created in the past are actually really close to each other. And that was pretty interesting. Yes, I don't know if I want to get into, okay, so to move energy, to trick yourself into feeling it, I use paintbrushes usually when I teach this to classes, and people will partner up. But you create a motion, right, just like that, but you start with one finger at a time, and then you just mimic the motion. You just follow it. You put what's normally in here, there, and you move it. And this activates like little energetic pores. Then eventually you can move through like bigger chunks of your body, and that's how you raise energy up by doing it with the feet. And feet work is very important to open up the feet. And you can't overdo it. It can go on for hours. This is in theory why in religious texts the feet were so glorified, because if you can open up the feet and pull in energy up both legs simultaneously, these are the steps into manually inducing Kundalini spikes. But you have to be able to go through your legs first. You have to. And the only way that you can do that is by work, by doing this thing that people call tactile imaging now. So you would just put your attention on your foot, and you would brush the whole bottom of your foot, and then you would move up the leg, and then the other leg. And when you do things like put your brain there and there at the same time, that's when new senses start to open up. And then, because then you'll start to get to the point where you can put it there, like in several different places. And this is how people are able to like grab information from different energetic places, like the Akashic records and stuff, which I'm certified in that as well. But I don't normally do it for people because I like to refer them to like a specialist. Like I know astral projection and healing. Like I have a certification in Akashic record reading, but I don't use it. I just wanted to make sure that it was real, and it is. And but I started out having a lot of out-of-body experiences, and then using my relationship with energy to do healings for people, which I did for free for a long time, which I charged very little for a very long time. Now I still charge very little. But so I started using it, like my relationship with energy, in like a proactive way, I guess. Because if you're just out there cruising the astrals all the time, like you're not going to be a very stable individual. And starting to pull in energy through your legs is very important, because, you know, the grounding thing, you don't want all these things open up here and then like this is completely stuck and nothing's happening. That's where disease comes from. So yeah, so you want to be able to pull in energy and store it, which I have plenty of videos that will kind of show what that is, because I kind of like, I wanted to make some videos that showed it and also gave tools like some sound in there that'll help ease up. But something that also helps is hot water, and just mimicking the motion, having a partner, and doing it. And then you'll find out in different places that you can put energy that do different things. And another good time to practice this type of stuff is during Shavasana. And like if you have a extended end of a yoga class and you just unkinked a bunch of hoses, that's a good time to move energy. But you might like shock yourself when you find that you have chakras in like your hip bones and your shoulders, and it's very complicated. So as most people understand, if they're interested in astral projection, is that time works a lot differently. And that's why the movie Inception was very good at explaining that. One thing that they did in reverse in the movie Inception, for some reason, I don't know why, is they say they call it the kick in the movie, where you induce the feeling of falling, and that makes you go up. That makes you come back, if I'm remembering that correctly. When in reality, inducing the feeling of falling makes you go deeper. If anybody is good at lucid dreaming, a way that you can, let's say you're practicing different techniques for out-of-body experiences, and you lucid dream, and you haven't had a conscious out-of-body experience yet. If you're in that mode, while you're dreaming, if you could remember, close your eyes and fall flat on your face and see what happens. That feeling of falling can activate your energy body, and you'll find yourself at your bed. And if you practice enough technique, and let's say you're getting good at having out-of-body experiences, and you're laying in bed and you're completely comfortable, then just imagining almost the feeling of falling through the bed can activate the energy body. So that feeling of falling is extremely important. Some people like to do things like pretend you're in an elevator and that it's going down, stuff like that. But you have to combine this stuff with technique and energy raising. Otherwise, your probability of succeeding is going to be extremely low. I had my first one on purpose after practicing for one night, and the following morning, I was very relaxed and I practiced technique and I was out of my body. And then I went into my living room where there was 3 people standing at attention, and then one person was at my head is back to me. I'm an energetic form, mind you. And I asked the question that everybody loves to ask, are you my guides? And the person that had his back to me started to turn around and he said, yes. And then when I got back to my body, I was hyperventilating, and I walked into the living room and I was like, okay, that just happened. Now, fast forward many years into the future, I was in a channeling class in Chicago, and we had an experience where a guide was gonna like take us somewhere, and we were doing a lot of practicing and technique. So I had an out-of-body experience in that moment where I was taken to that moment where I first had my first out-of-body experience, and I saw myself walk into the living room and ask myself if I'm my guide. And then I answer yes. And then it was over. And that was when I learned that time is really crazy out there, and a lot of times you do go back and help yourself. And so a lot of times what people think is like their guardian angel or something is actually them. And it's like, you start to find out, like that movie, was it Bill and Ted's Bogus Journey? Where like you do go back and like do things for yourself. And it gets complicated. But yeah, and that has a lot to do with soul retrieval. And you help yourself, you help other people like advance, and everybody wins. So yeah, so storing energy, technique, okay, technique could be some simple things like you're laying in bed and you're comfortable and you try to reach out with your arms, but it's more like your feelings, your ability to feel. And you reach up and you try to pull on a rope as if you're pulling yourself out. Now this might not kick an astral projection to happen. However, when you are really relaxed in bed, if you keep practicing techniques, you'll subconsciously do it when you're in the perfect relaxed state. But you have to practice the techniques. It's got to be there. There's other things that you can do, of course, like write on a piece of paper, just maybe your signature or something, and you put one by your headboard and you put one across the room on the opposite side where your feet would be. And you try to, like, when you're laying down, you could try to reach either with your hands or your feet, but it's your energetic hands and feet. It's your feeling to that wall, to try to, the one in front of you, to try to see it, and you can do the same thing behind you. Or you could just simply, like, you have your foot on the bed and you just stretch out your feeling to try to scratch the wall. Now you might not succeed, but that's not important. What's important is that you're showing this higher version of yourself, that you're not just some stupid monkey, and you're trying to do things that most people don't ever do while they're incarnated. They just don't. And when you show that you are trying to do this, you get more attention from your helpers. You get permission to do things. But you have to practice the technique and the techniques. And don't expect it to work immediately, and don't get discouraged, because it's all about that muscle memory and the subconscious taking over when you're in the perfect state. And I would recommend anybody to go to astraldynamics.com or get the book, and it's just a whole series of techniques. And and that's Robert Bruce, and he talks about all of this stuff. I actually had an out-of-body experience at Robert Bruce's house in his guest room when I stayed the night there. It was pretty awesome. There was as soon as I exited, which this happens sometimes, there was a woman waiting for me, and she goes, "We're gonna go in Robert's room now." I'm like, okay. And then we just went in there and he was sleeping. I'm like, all right. And then I'm like, I'm gonna go back to my body, so I make sure that I remember this. And I pop back to my body, and I heard her right next to my ear just start laughing. And it was fun. There's a lot of good experiences can happen. Sometimes you don't meet anyone, and you're just wandering around. Sometimes people are giving you a lot of attention. The first actual guide I believe I met, if you want to call it that, was a totem guide out of body. It was a big black bull. But I've also met very humanistic looking things, and a lot of times that they change based on your ability to grasp them. And you might see them as somebody that looks like somebody that you know, but that's just because your brain slightly has altered the reality. It's going from your bed to being out of body is the most trustworthy thing, or starting from your body, and there's no break in consciousness. Now, something that could happen in an astral place is that your brain can create your surrounding. So if you don't have full control of the steering wheel while you're in energetic form from start to finish, you can't necessarily trust what's going on, because you could have just created your surroundings. So that's very important. And some beings that you'll meet out there, you might think are there to like serve you, or they have information for you. You could ask them a question and they'll be like, I don't know what the hell you're talking about. Yeah. And but other times you have teachers that'll sit you down and like start to give you lessons, or give you the same environment over and over and over again and see if you can fix it. It's very strange little tasks you get put through out there. I've met, otherworldly things. I've met just like animals. I've known not to pry into anything that would be considered government related, because that's when you get attention you don't want. So, what's that?
Yeah, it's like
yeah. But like, it's important to make it clear when you do stuff like this, if you find yourself getting more attention than you want from other people that are watching, then just make it clear that all you want to do is excel yourself. You want to work on yourself, and you only care about your own evolution, you're not trying to interfere with anybody's life or project or anything. That's a much better way of doing it, unless you get approached and they like want you to work for them. But with that, I would say, if you haven't heard of the Monroe Institute, definitely look it up. They teach a lot of courses on this subject. I've been there a couple times. Yeah, so let me just show a couple things. I'll give you an example of the rope technique, which works really well when you turn on your energy body, but you have to get there first. Yeah, this is from my Instagram. And another thing, sometimes you can get stuck pretty easily. Like, say, everybody knows what sleep paralysis is, I'm assuming. If you get sleep paralysis, the rope technique helps a lot to get out of it. But also my first technique that I used was the rollout technique, which is about the sloppiest thing you could possibly do. You basically just collapse onto the ground, and depending on where the most magnetism is in your body, which is normally the head, you could be literally like trying to get out of your body like this, like the rest of you is out, but you can't get your head to move. And sometimes it takes a lot of brute force or just a different type of technique. But yeah, astral dynamics will lead you to a lot of techniques. So, hold on. Okay. This is kind of a little bit more advanced, but this shows how you can move your consciousness outside of your body. Like, that is a tube that's moving in one direction. Now, if you could stand and try to create this tube and spin it for a while, and then make it more complicated and make a second tube going opposite directions, these type of techniques are what opens up the brain to work at a higher functioning level. And it also gets you more attention from your guides and things like that, because you're using your brain in a way that most people never will. And it seems simple, but that's how you get attention. That's how you blow off some fireworks for somebody to see. And this is kind of where it starts. People like the hand a lot more than the feet, because it's right there. But feet work is more important than hand work. But when you are able to move the whole of your consciousness back and forth through your entire hands, and you open up channels in your arms, that's when you can kind of like grab food and know if it's going to be good for you or not. Or like, you can communicate in your body with your hands energetically. And you have to be able to do this in order to move up the arms. You have to be able to do that to move up the arms into the heart, up to the throat, up to the third eye, crown, to do all these movements. And to store energy, to have an astral projection, you have to do these techniques. You have to do these practices to give yourself a better chance. You don't have to, but it's going to give you a way better chance to exit and a way better chance to stay out for longer. So after you would practice the foot techniques, and you go up the ankle, through the shin, to the knee, into the root. And then eventually you're into much more complicated things. And that's the whole thing. You have to put in the work. I've had a lot of students not succeed because they will not do the work. They're just like, I'm just gonna go take DMT. And I just say, oh, well, this is a way of being able to do it all the time. But it's like, yeah, but it's very hard. Well, it's astral projection is not supposed to be easy. Otherwise, everybody would be doing it. But it seems like they've been using technology in some ways for thousands of years. It's just different type of tech to induce it for people easier. And that's where the Monroe Institute would come into play for a lot of people. But I like to teach people how to do it manually. And that doesn't happen in just a few weeks. So you might get lucky, but it'll take a while to be able to move your consciousness through your body. And then once you get there, then you'll have the ability to know when other things show up in the room, because like there's a compass type of thing inside the mind that when something extra shows up out of nowhere, it points in that direction. I don't know if people are familiar with Autobiography of a Yogi and the Yogananda stuff, but he developed to a point where he was able to find people after they incarnate again, just by staying on their signal. And that type of ability comes from doing stuff like this, and you don't know until you do it. Yeah, I have plenty of stories, but if anybody wants to ask any questions, like questions throughout is fine. Yes.
When you're planning to astral project, you call in your spirit guides for protection.
You can.
Do you imagine a place where you want to go, or does your mind just take you someplace?
Yeah, that comes with practice. Your mind could immediately take you somewhere. If you are really energetically disconnected from your body, your first thought could take you somewhere. That's why you need intention. Sometimes you don't need intention. You can do whatever you want, but if you're like, I want to go visit, Susie, and that's your actual first thought, it'll probably take you there. But if you have a lot of chatter, it probably won't. It might be like your 10th thought, like, oh yeah, Susie. And then you might jump, you might not. Jumping can be difficult, not impossible, but you can jump from one place to another by intention. And you can ask for your higher self or your guides for help or protection. That doesn't necessarily mean it's going to happen. One thing I do now automatically to clear the room once my energy body's turned on and I'm not even disconnected yet is I do the Om. I just do the simple Ah Om. And in all the old texts, they all agree that Om is like the most powerful thing, but we want to make everything super complicated with 27 syllables. But it doesn't have to be. You just have to remember to practice. But if you're scared that something might be in the room or something, which does happen, then you could just reverberate the Ah Om. One thing that will always, if you're afraid of being out of body, because you're afraid you might get like some astral wildlife messing with you, your best protection is no fear. If you have no fear, nothing can really do anything to you. And it can transform things. Now, people often ask is it possible to not come back? And the answer is yes, it's possible to not come back. But is it going to happen? Probably not. It's about as likely of getting hit by a bus or something. It can happen, but it's very, very unlikely. But I do know, I have heard a story from someone about him meeting his sister out in the astral when he thought she was still alive, and then she wasn't. He went back and she didn't, and she died. But she was dying naturally. She wasn't dying by having an astral projection. Yeah. Any other questions? Go ahead.
Do you ever astral project unconsciously? Meaning you don't intentionally, you're just dreaming. I mean, does that happen in just dreams?
So yeah. An astral projection and a dream can like kind of intermingle with itself, because it's your subconscious creating your surroundings, right? And if you're not having the full stream of consciousness from exit to the end, then you could have messed something up. You can see people when you're out of the body, like playing out their dreams. Like you could watch people dreaming, and they're doing stuff like they're seeing something that you're not, like because it's in their head. So that happens.
Do you feel anything when you get back in? Because several times in my life I've had like this dream, and I'd wake up like somebody gave me an electric shock. I felt like I was thrown back into my seat.
Yeah.
I woke up like that. I'm like, what the hell was that?
Yeah.
Then I wondered if it didn't have something to do with that. I don't know if you feel something when you come back in, or
It could be jerky, and when you turn on the energy body, it often feels like electricity without pain.
yeah, like a shock.
Mm-hmm. Like, especially in the beginning, like your energy body will feel exactly like being electrocuted without pain, and it's a very nice feeling. Anything else? Go ahead.
Somebody once told me, though, that it's always better to go up instead of down. That, like, going down sometimes will tell you the wrong way. If you're going up on it through your crown or whatever, that you would usually have a better chance of going where you would like to go.
Yeah, you can exit out a chakra, sure, but let's say, okay, it's like it's a full body thing. Like it's not like you're exiting out your roots. Your whole body is turned on, and then you just induce the feeling of falling. But inducing the feeling of falling doesn't even mean going down. You know, that's kind of abstract. But yeah, the feeling of falling definitely works, and I recommend trying it while you're lucid dreaming. And if you don't lucid dream, doing the simple techniques such as asking yourself if you're dreaming while you're awake several times. I'm sure people have heard. Or try to do something like levitate an object, or try to fly yourself, and then you'll do it in the dream, and if it works, you go, oh, I'm dreaming, like that whole thing. But you have to actually practice it. Just like some of these techniques, you have to actually do it even if you're not going to succeed. Like, in real life you can't fly or levitate an object, but you still have to really try. And that's how these things trigger and how they work successfully. And to do it like a child, like as if you think you can. I've been lucid dreaming forever. Like, I've been able to control my dreams way before out-of-body experiences, and it helped me have a lot more, because there's a way of like crossing, and a lot of it has to do with the falling on your face type of thing. Sounds simple, but hard to remember, and because like a lot of times we don't even remember our dreams at all. But yeah, are there any other questions? Go ahead.
During astral projection, can you encounter people remote viewing?
I have never. God, how would that even be? That's crazy. Have you ever got into Ingo Swann? So one time I decided I want to go to the moon. And so I flew to the moon, and when I got there, everything became one-dimensional, flat, and I didn't know what was going on. And so Ingo Swann is a famous remote viewer, and he did a lot of work on stuff on the moon. And he has a book called Penetration that used to be $500 to get a copy because they only printed one print of it, and then they closed it down. And then when his contract ended, they allowed it to come out on Audible and all sorts of things. But yeah, so when I got close to the moon in this particular instance, things that were there distorted my perception, so I couldn't go. Like, people way more advanced than me. And I was telling that story to Dr. Asmanagic's wife. He's the Bosnian pyramid architect. And I was talking to her about it, and before I even said that it went flat, she said it for me. And I was like, I got there, and then all of a sudden she goes, went flat? I was like, yeah. I'm like, why? She goes, well, look in the Ingo Swamp. And then it came that there's just people that don't want to be messed with there.
Lunar people?
What's that?
You said like lunar people?
I don't know, older race. So, yeah.
So if you go there and it ends up being lush and green, you didn't go there then?
I guess. it looked just like the moon when I was going there.
Okay.
But when I didn't get to like put my feet down or anything like that, So, but yeah, his book's great. Yeah, I met a remote viewer too that was in the military when I went to the Monroe Institute, and he did a lot of talking about it. Apparently, remote viewing, yeah, you can't stop it, and that's why it's like trying to be weaponized so much. You can't stop a remote viewer from viewing something. You could stop an astral projector from going somewhere. They have like security in some areas, but you can't stop a remote viewer. So that's the interesting part about it.
No way to block it?
I guess not.
That's weird. You think they would be able to do something?
It's unique in that way. Yeah. So, but yeah, these two things are not the same. And
Like lead blocks, X-ray, maybe there was some material that would.
he said no.
Oh.
Yeah. And he's been around. I can't remember his name, but yeah. So Monroe Institute, if you want to learn about remote viewing, they teach it there too, along with astral projection using technology. But I recommend to use these videos, and I put a lot of them to the public. It's just youtube.com/energywork, website energywork.com, Instagram energy_work. Just simple stuff. I never really like to overcomplicate it because I lived a while in Los Angeles and they came up with all these insane names for things that like it got really old really fast. But anything else? No. Go ahead.
Do you have any like go-to methods or ways that you like start to calm your body down, like kind of get in the vibe to astral project?
Yeah. Just doing the wave breathing is important, like filling up the stomach and then waving it up, but feeling every part of your torso as you're inhaling and then exhaling is a good one. I think if you could practice technique and catch yourself in the morning right when you wake up, that'll be the best time to practice. But sometimes just practicing until you fall asleep would be beneficial. Like that's what you're doing that night. And even if like you only end up getting 3 hours of sleep because you have to work at 8 and you've been practicing for 5 hours, that's beneficial. Do stuff like that. Go on.
So like, yeah, like meditating to get into like a theta state or something like that would kind of.
It'll help, but you also have to practice technique. You have to. Go ahead.
So when we first met, I told you that I knew nothing about astral projection, and that was absolutely the truth. But as you've been talking, I felt like I've been practicing self-hypnosis for about 20 years. I started with hypnobirthing when I was pregnant with my kids, and I used that self-hypnosis through all my labors. And a lot of the things that you're talking about feel very, very similar. And so I'm wondering like where that, I think it's like, I feel like the self-hypnosis is sort of capped at a certain point, and what's happening next is more of what you're talking about. But a lot of things that you've talked about, I could relate to on a self-hypnosis level of going to a different place that you created, practicing it every night before you go to bed. I mean, he practices every night for 20 years. You could say it in your, like if you're listening to a track as an example of self-hypnosis, eventually you can recite all those words on your own, even though you fell asleep while you were listening to it. So I'm just wondering if that's something that might be a helpful practice for people that were trying to get into that state, because from my experience, that's the closest to any of this that I've ever come, and I just wondered what your thoughts were on that.
Yeah, in combination with out-of-body technique. Like you have to, you could use that, but you have to show the universe, or whatever you want to call it, that you want to do this thing and that you're trying to do this thing. And then it'll give you permissions to actually do it. And it might happen spontaneously, which is a lot of people have spontaneous ones. And you have a much better chance of that happening if you add what you're talking about with different techniques of stretching your energetic body and your consciousness outside of it, not metaphorically, but literally. There's nothing metaphoric about an out-of-body experience. It's very, very, very real. And so if anybody asks, if you're questioning if something was real or not, then it probably wasn't one.
Right.
So it's very hard to mistake it for anything.
Thank you.
Okay.
So the universe literally decides whether it's going to allow you to do it?
Kind of. Based on effort, you will get permissions. Might not happen right away, but you'll get them. And there's some fundamental things that are important to go along with it to make you feel safe for doing it, such as having a good structure, feeling secure in your life in general helps. Not being angry, just like if you were to do some sort of hallucinogenic thing, you don't really want to do it if you're upset. It's going to have a bad reaction. There's different techniques that I've learned from Master Zhou with opening third eye stuff, and the thing in Qigong that they stress all the time is happy and relaxed, do these things while you're happy, connect it with a happy thought. That's because it allows things to open up easier and give you less chance of causing yourself bodily harm. And not all mantras are meant to be done in out-of-body form, but a lot of them are. I've messed myself up a little bit being in energetic form and practicing something that I wasn't supposed to. That was a while ago. But I like the go-to of the Aum. And that's very safe. It'll clear the room out if anything's there to bother you, which can happen. Because there's a whole other existence on different levels.
In what ways would you say astral projection has improved your life?
I've noticed that as people get older, or it could just be the times that we're in, but the human condition of being not sure about if anything happens when you die, or if there's any rebuke for poor behavior. I've seen the way people act that aren't sure, and I don't have that same issue of like losing my humanity or something, because there is more. And so I'd say that, and it just made me very curious. It allowed me to meet a lot of very interesting people, and it keeps on going. So.
Do you believe astral projection is connected to the afterlife, or is it more the idea that there's just a whole lot more out there that most of us are oblivious to?
It's connected to the afterlife.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and you can meet yourself like 20 incarnations from now, and and they come back and help you with different things. But everybody helps each other. That's what soul retrieval is. So when people die, you can get stuck. there is a space that is very close to the physical where a lot of ghosts and things like that exist, and they're interacting. And some of them want to move on and can't. Now, what ends up happening eventually is someone or something does come along to help you move on to the next level. And it's all a big circle of life thing. Everybody's helping one another in order to help themselves and helping your future self and your past and whatever. So a lot of soul retrieval is helping somebody else move on. And from there, there's some sort of emotional connection to it that allows you to retrieve like more pieces of yourself. Trying not to break up your soul in one lifetime through trauma is very difficult. But you could also go back and retrieve those traumatic things that you lost. If that makes sense. What's that?
Pick up the pieces you left behind.
Right.
Yeah.
It's like, yeah, good enough. Yeah. And yeah, they could be from when you were first born, and it could be from last week. But people are always nonstop talking about past life, past life, past life. But like this life is enough. It's more than enough. And when you're doing these techniques of moving your consciousness through your body, that's when you'll find there are rock hard areas. And in those areas, when you're trying to move your consciousness through it, it could go very slow or not at all. That's where memories and emotions and traumas are stored, and they'll come up when you're doing this. I've learned techniques of just finding these things, like zooming in on them, and then like it could have very sad, angry reactions and memories attached to them. But when you burn the emotion away, that's when you're able to kind of move through. A lot of it's brute force, a lot of it's feeling the emotion that you've been avoiding. Could be a memory. So, but that happens, you'll find memories are stored in the body. And when you're moving your consciousness through, it'll be very apparent. But you have to start with the feet and with the hands, inch by inch. Do not skip anything. And yeah, so if you wanted to go through stuff like that, the videos are on YouTube for free, and you can just ask questions. And when you get to a certain point, then I'll start sending more advanced things. Like there's topics that I didn't get into today just because it didn't seem relevant, but there are more advanced energetic remote controls in your body that aren't on a normal diagram like a Hindu one, but they're there. And all of it starts with being able to move your energy in your body. Most people won't do it. I recommend you try. And astral projection would be a lot easier after that, or out-of-body experience. And again, you can spike Kundalini, and that could cause an out-of-body experience too. But you have to be able to move energy through the feet, and you have to be able to clear out your spine. I've spiked it before where it hits an obstruction, and like I'm bedridden for like 3 hours. So like you want to make sure you're doing the work. No skipping. So that's it. Go ahead.
Bedridden with what?
My stomach was just in intense pain.
So it was pain.
Yeah, but it was like a throbbing, like being kicked between the legs type of thing. And it was just because like I wasn't clear when I was spiking it. And if you come into any issues when you're moving energy in terms of like headaches or just can't get grounded again, then I recommend eating a steak, or if you're a vegetarian, just put a hot dog down. I had a student of mine call me up. I don't even know where I was, but I wasn't in the country, and she was doing the spiking technique, and she was telling me what was wrong, and I was like, well, you have to eat something that isn't vegetarian, I'm sorry. So she did pick a corn dog of all things. and then she was fine. And it happened to me once when I was teaching a class in Norway, and I just ate a hot dog wrapped in bacon afterwards. I'm not saying that's a good diet.
Cholesterol got blocked, but you had blocked the other thing.
Yeah. So you just want to take it down sometimes. And yeah, being open all the time is not recommended. And doing techniques when you're angry or sad is not recommended either. It's going to perpetuate problems. So being happy is important. That's where Peter Pan got that idea.
I was thinking of that when you were talking about, I was thinking of the happy thought.
Happy thought.
That's funny, you read my mind.
So that's important. Harder to put into practice because like you want to advance as fast as you can, but sometimes you're just supposed to sit still. So that's it. Unless there's any other questions. Okay. Thanks.
Thank you.
Oh yeah, I did write a children's book series called Chakra Friends. This is just the example of the box set, and I have a comic book series called Quartz Force coming out soon.